Okay, so it's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone over in Europe and other countries here. I'd like to start off by introducing myself and our topic for the day. This is a Teamstudio and TLCC hosted webinar about XPages Blast. The presenters of the data today will be Matt White and Tim Clark. And so feel free to tweet about all of us and whatever you're learning in the session today with the hashtag XPages, and also mention us. All of our Twitter addresses or Twitter handles are listed here on the home screen. So to start off, introducing myself, my name's Talene Badrikian. I'm the Marketing Director at Teamstudio, and I have with us today Dan Colbert, Vice President of North America, Latin America Sales for Teamstudio. What we'll be doing is going through some of Teamstudio's offerings, taking a few minutes of your time to explain who we are, what we do, and some of the products that we present to our customers. And then we'll hand off the controls to Howard Greenberg at TLCC to talk about what they do, some of the webinars and classes that they provide, and then we'll get into the heart of the matter here with Matt White and Tim Clark. So, Dan, if you want to take control of the microphone here, I'll manage the slides for you, and we can get things started.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Talene. Brief introduction and possibly a refresher on Teamstudio. And by the way, welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for spending this portion of your day with us today. We hope that it's very, very helpful and can assist you in your application development. Teamstudio may have been helpful or may have assisted you in the past, and currently with application development, we've been delivering innovative developer tools and developer productivity tools to the Notes and Domino community since 1996. Specializing in source code control, version management, and management of your source code. So we have moved into the mobile application area in 2010 with our Unplugged product, and Unplugged gives you the ability to extend your Notes Domino applications out to mobile devices. It's also something new to check out if you haven't done so already. Teamstudio Unplugged, as I mentioned, it gives you the ability to extend your Notes apps. The unique thing about Unplugged is that it leverages the powerful technology of XPages and provides a native application experience for the user. We're very proud to have been the recipient of the IBM Collaboration Solutions Award at the Connect conference just a couple of months back. And this product is available on the major mobile platforms of BlackBerry, Android, and iOS devices. In addition to Unplugged as a platform, which will allow the users and clients to develop custom mobile applications that meet their own specs, we have recently produced an application which is a hosted solution, and it is a production-ready application for business continuity. So Teamstudio Continuity allows users to import their plans, their crisis, emergency plans, and call tree information directly into the mobile device so that this information is available for them if their connectivity becomes compromised. Teamstudio Continuity also will work on all the major platforms. Thank you. We are very active in supporting the user groups and conferences that take place within our community, so perhaps you have seen us at one of the shows. Next on our agenda will be the IMLove show in St. Louis, and that's May 6th and 7th. So if you are planning on attending, definitely come by and get some of the latest information about Teamstudio, and we hope to see you there. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the presentation today.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So before I hand things off to Howard to talk about TLCC and then get into the main part of the presentation here, I wanted to mention that we have over 400 registrants for this event, and by no means are we looking to hold you back from asking questions. You are all muted, but you are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A component of the WebEx client here. If you are looking to contact me directly in order to resolve any kind of WebEx issues you're having, feel free to communicate with me through the chat window. But if you do have questions, please direct those to the Q&A section. Howard and Paul from TLCC will be managing those for Tim and Clark at the end of the event. So with no further delay, I'll hand off the controls here to Howard, and we'll learn a bit about TLCC.
Well, thank you, Tulene. And can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine. Thanks, Howard.
Okay, thanks, Tulene. So my name's Howard Greenberg, and I'm one of the partners here at TLCC along with Paul Delanevia. Say hello, Paul.
Hello.
After you unmute yourself, of course.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Good day, everyone.
And so I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar series today. I'm really excited by this one. I've heard Matt and Tim give this presentation for the last couple of years at Connect, and I can guarantee you that one of the tips they talk about today will be, probably more than one, but at least one will be very helpful to you. So I think it will be a great webinar for anyone doing XPages work. So just take a minute and first talk about what's upcoming. Next month we have Dr. Marky Roden, and for those of you who follow the blog world and Planet Lotus, you probably know Mark Roden blogs a lot about jQuery, and he also did a session at Connect on jQuery, which was very well received, and so we're going to bring that to everyone via the webinar. So for those of you who are not able to attend his session at Connect, you get a chance to learn about jQuery and how that would fit into your XPages development. And we also have, we'll announce in the next few days our May webinar. And I think you're going to be excited by that one. So the URL is on the screen to keep up with our webinars coming up. Also on that page is a link to our previous webinars. All our webinars have been recorded going back 2-3 years, so that's a great resource for everyone. A little bit about TLCC. We have 7 XPages courses. These are all self-paced courses. Our newest course is on creating XPages user interfaces using some of the controls that were in the extension library in the IBM Update Pack 1 and that are now built into Domino 9. And so that course is actually on sale until April 12th. So you can save $200. And then we have the other XPages courses as well, from beginner to advanced. All our courses are self-paced training. You can learn it anywhere you are, but we still have the ability to ask questions of our instructors. We can also do private instructor-led training, either at your site or via a web interface. And we also do mentoring around XPages and Notes and Domino development in general. Okay, as Tulene mentioned, IMLUG is going to be May 6th and 7th in St. Louis. For those of you who are not familiar with these lugs, we just I just attended the LUG one in Belgium along with Matt and Tim, and that was a really great event. And I think for those of us here in the States, the IMLUG, which is run by Chris Miller and his team, is another great event that's been going on for the last couple of years. The best thing is this is free. So Chris has put together 2 days of great content that there's absolutely no charge except for your travel and getting there and for the hotel, of course. Now, the next day after IMLUG, we're very pleased to announce that we've been asked by the IMLUG group to have a Tackathon. Now, the Tackathon is a whole day of training that, in this case, we're going to talk about some of the topics we cover in our course on Rapid XPages Development, to create a nice user interface using some of these tools that are in the extension library. So we're going to spend a full day with Paul, from TLCC, and in addition, you'll get that course that we talked about, the Rapid XPages development course, and that includes a year of continued instructor support. And if you're registered to attend IMLUG, that's all that for $495. That's a great deal. So you'll see that up on the IMLUG website later today under the Tack It On tab. Okay, so if you have any questions, as Talene mentioned, on your WebEx interface, at the top is a ribbon bar, and one of the little options should be Q&A. If you don't see it there, use the drop-down arrow, and that will have the Q&A option. And that will give you the user interface where you can ask questions. So ask the questions, make sure you choose all panelists so we all can see it. And at the end of the webinar, we'll go through your questions. We won't be doing them as we go, but we will go through your questions at the end. Okay, so let me get started, introduce Matt and Tim. They've both been involved in XPages for quite a while, and they've done this XPages Blast, as I mentioned, at the last couple Lotusphere Connect sessions. So Tim, why don't you take it away? I'll pass control over to you. Hopefully, let me see if I can find that little chat thing. Let's see.
So I believe I have control. Matt, are you unmuted?
Unmuted. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to share my desktop and then do the presentation from there. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the slides.
Yep.
And
Tim, that's good. We see the slides and hear you fine.
Great. Okay, Matt, can I make sure I hear you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's great. Brilliant.
Excellent.
So, welcome everybody to the XPages Blast 2013. It's the 2013 season for us. We did this at Connect, as Howard and Kay pointed out. We also just presented this at the Benelux Lotus User Group in Louvain, Belgium, just last week. So it's all good, fresh content. It's Q1. This is XPages Blast season for us, so I suppose we best get on with it. As Matt and I have been doing this for a while, we kind of know each other quite well now. We've been doing XPages since before they were released to the public in 8.5.0. We first met at the trainers, as it were, meeting in Dublin with the developers of XPages. And we've known each other ever since, which is all good stuff. So I'm going to introduce Matt. So I'm not Matt White. I'm not the guy you're looking at right now on the screen. My name is Tim Clark, but let's pretend just for a second that I am Matt White. I am principal consultant with the London Developer Co-op, and we do a whole bunch of development stuff, ranging everywhere from Notes and Domino, XPages, all the way through to hardcore Java and all the twiddly little bits in between. I'm also the lead developer with LQG software, which means I write IQJam, and Matt, help me out because I can never remember your product.
IdeaJam.
IdeaJam, that's the one. And those are great products that you can get through LQG that allow you to have ideas inside your company and then vote on them. Ideation, I think they call that now. They've got a name for it. So that's all good. So we can do that for you in a Notes and Domino environment with an XPages application. I'm also the owner of XPages101.net, which is a whole bunch of video blogs about how to learn XPages. So if you bought the TLCC content and you've got that far and you've done all of that good stuff and you want something a bit extra, you can come along and buy a subscription to XPages101.net and you'll get me, Matt White, telling you a whole bunch of great XPages stuff to get you a little bit further down the road as well. Now, as if that wasn't enough, in the last year I've done 3 of the most stressful things you can ever do in your life. I've got married, I've become a father, and I've bought a new house. and I've developed some XPages, and I'm still alive to drink beer and talk about it, which is just an amazing feat. So congratulations,
only
Matt.
Just though.
Only just. So congratulations, Matt, on all of that. Well done. It's been a pleasure presenting this with you, and I guess you get to stick the knife into me now.
Excuse me for just 1 second, Tim and Matt. I think we're having a little bit of audio trouble with just the volume. So if I could just ask you to speak louder as you put the knife into Tim. So.
Yeah, actually, if I can interject, Tim and Matt, if you go to the voice control in the WebEx interface, there is a way to turn up the microphone a little.
Okay, let's try that.
So click on voice control, and then the slider you can move over to the right a little, and that might help too.
I'm turned up to maximum, so hopefully everyone can hear me. So my name is not Tim Clark. I'm the owner of TC Soft Consulting. For 17 years prior to that, I worked for IBM as a business partner enablement specialist. Where we worked with business partners and, as Tim was saying, did XPages training. In fact, I helped write the very first XPages training course that got used right around the world for a couple of years. This year, I was made an IBM champion for all of the good work that I do helping out with the UK Lotus user group and various other user groups around the world and all of my XPages training. And also, I've switched over from being a techie to being a project management person, specifically doing Prince2 and ITIL style project management. But I do still talk to him, even though he's project manager. And in my spare time, I also practice project management skills against my work, but also my family as well. The family has less success, shall we say, than the projects.
You've met my kids, haven't you, Matt?
I have.
Yeah. Okay. That's all good. So, Matt, I guess you get to talk about the versions.
Yeah, sure. So the way that this session works is we've basically got 30 tips that we're going to go through, and the vast majority of them will work on 8.5.3. Where there is something that's specific to Notes or Domino 9, you'll see that little blue icon that's at the bottom of the screen on the slide, and you'll know that the thing we're talking about is specific to 9. But generally what we try and do is keep things current as the slides were written, which is 8.5.3, but I suppose they're slightly out of date now, given that, was it 3 days or 4 days ago, 9 was released. So in theory, you can use all of this on whatever version you're doing, pretty much.
So just for everyone's information, that little blue logo in the middle bottom there is actually the new Domino 9 Designer logo. If you haven't already downloaded Domino Designer version 9, that's the logo that you'll see on your desktop, and that's what you should launch to go do all of the XPages goodness. Okay, so we're going to talk about configuration tips to start with. As you can see, we're going to go through configuration tips, client-side tips, server-side tips, and how to do some debugging, which we know is always key to any developer's heart. So we don't skip that stuff, we get straight into that as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is designer tweaks. Designer comes out of the box with a whole bunch of good stuff littered, literally littered and thrown and scattered all over the screen. But you can tailor that stuff, and some of the 3 top things that you can tailor are working sets. You can group similar applications together. If you haven't tried this, it's been around for a while now. If you haven't tried this, we really recommend you do, because if you start working on one application that becomes a suite of NSFs to do the same application, having everything else that you were working on, like that discussion database you were tweaking for somebody, and the modification to your mail file that you were doing to stop, people sending return receipts that you wanted to, be able to turn on and off. So when you've got all of that stuff cluttering up the left-hand side of your screen, it makes it a lot harder to work on your application and your suite of applications. So just look at working sets, because it allows you to turn those things on and off and group them together, so you can only see this group of applications that I'm working on today. Perspectives are brilliant. The Domino Designer, it's no secret that it's written and based on top of Eclipse. And Eclipse has perspectives for when you're doing different things. And a perspective is just a different way of looking at things. And exactly the same inside the Domino Designer framework, the perspective gives you a different way of looking at the same information. So you can move all of the windows around, you can have them different sizes and shapes and stuff, and you get to see the stuff you need while you're developing in that particular style. So there are Java perspectives, there are XPages perspectives, there are Domino perspectives now, which take away all of the XPages controls on the right-hand side and give you more real estate to look at the forms or views or stuff you're coding, or the latest script agents or whatever. The only other thing that we'd say about Designer to start with is that turn on the line numbers. When you get that lovely error code that says there's an error in line 493 of your JavaScript, trying to find line 493 is really, really difficult, especially if you're trying to debug somebody else's code, because you're not going to be as familiar with it. So turn on the line numbers, and to do that you just right-click inside any of the editor windows and turn on the Show Line Numbers tick, and that will allow you to find those things really, really quickly. The other thing that we'd like to point out at this point is that they've changed in version 9 the fact that you can actually control what palettes you get on the right-hand side. So if you're doing a whole bunch of development that's only ever going to be used on a browser on your intranet, you can turn off all of the mobile, the iNotes, the Facebook, all of that stuff. You can turn it off because you won't need it, right? Matt will tell us a little story later on about why you would never ever turn off the mobile controls, but we'll get to that later on. And you have absolute control now over what you get to see, which is great, because that concertina effect control of being able to see the controls when you open them up and stuff, it can be really frustrating trying to find something again and again and again, and when you come back to it, it's all squished up again. So only have the ones you need.
So my first tip that I'm going to talk about is one that will actually, in the short term, make your life slightly harder. And is counterintuitive, but it will save you time in the long run and save you trouble. When you first install Domino Designer and start doing XPages work, and you go up to the project menu, you'll see that there is a checkbox in the menu called Build Automatically, and that's turned on. I recommend, and I think quite a lot of people who've been using XPages for a long time recommend that you turn that off. The reason being is really two reasons. One is, if you're working in a team and you're building automatically every time you save a custom control or a script library or an XPage, you're going to end, and other people are doing exactly the same, you're going to end up with all sorts of conflicts going on when you either replicate your data.
Matt, we have lost your audio. That's a complete loss, Matt. If you could check at your end, if you have an alternative. Tim, you may want to pick up on this one.
I'll pick up on this one. So basically, what Matt was trying to say is that if you're working as a team and you have build automatically turned on, I will go and save something and it will build automatically. And a person at the other end, if they're working on, you know, the same object as me or somewhere close to it, it could be that I've just gone and compiled the database, and they're going to then end up with all sorts of problems because stuff will be half compiled and half not compiled in their version. So if you're working in a team and working with a source control, for instance, then turn off build automatically, and it will save you all of that horrible options of having to work that stuff out afterwards. Source control is something we'll recommend later on and give you some tips on that. But get used to turning it off and get used to pressing Control B. Another tip that Matt, hello, I've lost control of my screen. No, there we go. A bonus tip here is that if you do start working on big applications, and some of the applications that Matt and I work on take something like 30 to 45 seconds to do a build because they're that big, one way that you can speed that up is you can now close all the other applications and the application you're working on, and then build it. And then what that does is that actually allows you, it speeds up the build and the compilation of the application completely. So it's a lot faster to do that. Now, as we've got into doing source control, it's worth mentioning at this point that there is an application that goes alongside this presentation that you can download. We'll give you the URL at the end. You can download a demonstration application for some of the things that are in this presentation. Matt and I designed it and built it using tips that we give you in the presentation, but we did it using source control, and we use a source control tool called GitHub, and that allows us to do team development across different people in our team.
Hi, Tim. Can you hear me again?
Hello, Matt. Welcome back.
Sorry about that. The application crashed for some reason.
Lovely. So I was just explaining about source control and the fact that we set up a demo application and that we use GitHub for our source control, and it allows us to check in and check out data and code and then do branching and streaming and fall back to places and stuff like that. So if you want to continue, that's fine, or do you want me to finish this one off?
You finish it and I'll take up the next one.
Okay, fine. So we use GitHub as a source control methodology. It doesn't take that long to set up inside of Domino Designer. There is a little bit of setup to do, and the way that we do it is that we take the source code out of Domino Designer as XML and put it in the file system, and then we use a third-party tool to replicate that stuff up and control the branching and threading on the file system, and then upload that to GitHub. GitHub's free. You don't have to pay for it. If you do public projects, then it's free. If you want to use private projects, then you need to buy a subscription. But Matt has very graciously on the XPages101.net site done a how to set up GitHub source control with Domino Designer video blog, and you can get that there on that bit.ly URL that's there, xpb, xpages_GitHub. You can go and open that up and start watching that for free. That's a good sample of the quality of Matt's content. Also, if you want to take a look at the application from GitHub, we've open sourced that. That's a public project, and you can go and download the application itself from that URL at the bottom, github.com/tcsoft/xpb2013. So you can go and take a look at the demo application as part of that URL. So you can take a look at this source control stuff for yourself. Matt.
Yeah, sure. So what you may have found if you're using Domino Designer 8.5.3, or indeed the 9.0 beta or 9.0 gold, is that over the day, the designer client can slow down and eventually crash. I know that I certainly used to get a crash fairly regularly at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And basically, IBM have released a tech note that suggests some changes. As long as you've got more than 2 gigabytes of RAM available on your workstation. And basically, it involves you going and opening this file in the notes program directory /framework/RCP/deploy, and it's called jvm.properties.
Nice.
And you want to look in there for look in there for 3 lines starting vm arg.xmx.xms and .xmca. And basically they configure how much memory the designer client is going to be using when it starts up on Windows. And those settings are very conservative indeed. They basically assume a very tiny amount of memory available. So on my machine, I've got 3 gig of RAM assigned on my machine, on my virtual machine that I use. This is what I use instead. So the XMX value is 1024, the XMS is 512, and the XMCA is also 512. And what I found is as soon as I've changed that, my design crashes far less frequently. And you'll see there at the bottom of that page the URL to the tech note that IBM published about this. And it's worth reading because depending on how much memory your machine has, you'll want to use different settings. The other thing that's worth noting is that if you've already done this setting on 8.5.3, when you upgrade your designer client to 9.0, you'll find that the settings are overwritten, so you'll have to go and reapply them. And also, if you install the 9.0 from scratch, it still sticks with the very conservative settings. So you'll want to go and make this change even if you've done it once before. So it's just a reminder, really, and for anyone who's not heard about it, go and have a read of that tech note.
Absolutely. And with that difference in versions in mind, it's worth getting onto our client-side tips. When you're developing an XPages application, you're not just developing with the Domino version 8.5.3 or 9 or whatever. You're actually developing with Dojo and One UI and CK Editor and all sorts of other things that have versions underneath. And it's worth us applauding IBM at this point because of the fact that they keep up to date with the current versions of things that are out. So we're not stuck on major back-level versions of X, Y, and Z. And we're not tied back to very old versions that have been deprecated and stuff. It's really good that they're keeping up to date. However, as developers, it causes us a minor headache in that we need to be aware of what version we're deploying to. So when we're developing and designing and doing all that good stuff we do in our designer clients, we obviously, as good uber techie geeks, love to have the very latest and greatest. We love to be on the bleeding edge. So currently I'm developing in version 9 of Domino Designer. And I have to be aware that the server I'm deploying to may not be up to version 9 just yet, seeing as it only came out on Thursday. In fact, the change control, of course, probably haven't even got to the change control person yet for me to upgrade that server to Domino 9. So I need to be aware of what version I'm developing for. And Domino Designer does give you some tools to allow you to back version the code that you're using, but you need to be aware of what you're going to and from. Okay, so if I'm on a Domino Designer 9 client and I'm developing for 8.5.1, I need to be aware that I've got a massive difference in the Dojo that I'm using. So some of the Dojo controls that I'm going to use in Designer 9 will not work, absolutely will not work in 8.5.1 if that's where my code is going to be deployed. So just worth, downloading the slides and taking a print out of this particular page and just putting it on your desk so that you can be aware of what's going on in what version.
The Dojo thing in particular is key because their website is maybe not the most easy to navigate, and it's very easy to find yourself reading documentation for 1.8 stuff when really you're wanting to be looking at 1.6 and things like that. So it's just something to always keep going in your mind.
Yeah, as I said, just have this printed out in front of you so that you don't make that mistake, because it will bite you very hard and it will take it ages to work out what's going on. Matt, I've
yes.
told them that they won't need the mobile controls, so you need to tell them that I'm a liar.
I mean, mobile controls are fine, but I mean, often you'll be doing a project that's primarily aimed at the desktop. But I keep on saying this, but every project that I've done for the last 18 months, there's been some line item that says, oh, and it needs to work on an iPad. And when I describe all the various options, suddenly that requirement disappears. But there are things you can do really simply that will make things just behave slightly more in a more friendly manner on a mobile device. So one of the simplest things you can do is when you're creating an XPage, go and add a metadata setting to the resources of your XPage. And the property name for that is called viewport. And then, as you can see in the content there, you can set the width, the initial scale, and whether the page is user scalable. And this is a setting that's specifically aimed at iOS devices, so iPhones and iPads. And they control how the page will get rendered when it's first loaded on the iPad or the iPhone. So, for example, in this case where I've said initial scale equals 2.3, basically the page will load and it will be zoomed in to the largest block of text on the page so that it's readable and will not require the user to pinch and zoom to go and actually find the content. And if you want to be really cruel to your user, you can actually say that the site isn't scalable. So you could say user scalable is no, and then the user can't pinch and zoom. So you do get some control over how the site operates on mobile devices. And just as a couple of other examples, you can also set the Apple Mobile Web App Capable property to yes or indeed no, and this will control whether you're allowed to bookmark a web page onto the home workspace page of your iOS device. And if you do that, then you've got this Apple Mobile Web App status bar style. I think they maybe need some longer descriptions of these things. But this one allows you to actually control the color of the bar right at the top of the page if you open a web page as an application from the home page of your device. So you get some fairly granular control over individual settings of how websites operate on these mobile devices if you want to. And it doesn't really cost you anything. That's the nice thing.
So the next thing is, I come at this from a user, really, and a developer who knows a little bit about doing mobile apps. And it really, really, really annoys me is that there are lots of developers out there developing mobile apps on the iOS platform who are lazy. They are so lazy, they shouldn't be allowed to touch their keyboards. It's terrible. In Notes and Domino, it's so easy. In XPages development, it's so easy to be nice to your users. You can allow them to pinch and zoom. You can turn it off if you want to be nasty. But you also get the ability to do this type on the property of your fields so that the user gets the right keyboard. I don't know if you've actually used any of the applications where you have to register yourself or put in your email address. There's actually an email keyboard that's available inside of the iOS device that has the app function visible on the first screen and underscores and hyphens and stuff like that, which is really, really useful to the user. It just speeds up their use of your application. Similarly, there's a date picker. Beware of date formats on that one, as we say on the slide. But you can use a date picker, the email, the number, keyboard, or the URL, the one that has that lovely .com button at the bottom that everyone seems to love when they're typing in a URL. So if you've got fields like that in your application, it takes you no time at all to set the type. Okay, but it makes your user's experience so much better. It would be a crime not to do it because it's going to take you seconds and make them think you're great.
The other thing that you'll find is that as time goes on, things like Chrome, browsers like Chrome are beginning to push functionality that was originally aimed at mobile devices back to the desktop. So, for example, on the latest versions of Chrome, if you set the field type to be date, then and you don't do anything else yourself, you'll find that Chrome has a built-in date picker that will just display without you doing anything. So eventually, I suspect that a lot of these browsers are actually going to converge, and this sort of thing will become the right thing to do in whatever context you're doing. So it's just a good habit to get into now.
Good advice, Matt. Thanks.
So I think Howard mentioned that the next webinar is going to be talking about jQuery in some detail. We're going to go over it very fast. But again, in recent projects, I've found myself using jQuery more and more in my applications. The reasons that XPages uses Dojo are sort of lost in the mists of time, but there were specific reasons that IBM did that. But what you'll find is, if you've done any serious JavaScript coding, is that Dojo is a very small subsection of the internet. There's not a vast amount of resources out there. Whereas jQuery is far and away the most popular framework on the internet today. I think something like 80% of websites use jQuery. And what that offers you is a whole load of extra resources if you start using jQuery in your applications. There's no problem with actually running jQuery and Dojo inside the same NSF. The only downside is that when the user first loads your web page, they're going to be downloading jQuery and Dojo. But once they've done that, it's not a massive problem. And if you're on a fast network, it's really not a serious problem at all. Mark Roden has a site called xomino or zomino.com where he talks about integrating jQuery into Domino, and he's got some really great tips and resources on there, so it's worth going and visiting that website. But I mean, the biggest thing for me with writing jQuery generally is that I just find it clicks faster in my head. I find Dojo something that I still have to think about, even though I've been writing it for 4 or 5 years now. jQuery I've been using more recently, but I find it much, much easier to just pick up and do something with it without having to think, now what was the developer thinking when they wrote this code? So for me, I just find jQuery just easier to use all round.
And it's also worth mentioning that, exomino.com is Marky Roden. He's going to be the next presenter on this series. So sign up for that one now, because he's got our recommendation. And if nothing else, come and listen to Mark talk to you about jQuery and how easy it is to put your XPages applications. Take it to the next level. Absolutely. So if any of you have heard us do XPages or seen us do XPages Blast previously, you'll know that we always talk about using CSS frameworks to lay out your applications, because it makes your applications easier to develop, because all of the IE versus Firefox versus Chrome versus mobile stuff is all done for you. The CSS files themselves take care of all of that will it work stuff. And it also makes the layout a lot easier and scalable, and things shrink and grow and stuff when you resize the browsers just really nicely, so you don't have to worry about all of that stuff. But the advice this time round from me, and Matt's going to give you different advice, but that's fine, is to use the extension library application layout. If you're using 8.5.3 with the extension library or 8.5.3 with the upgrade pack or version 9, you'll get the extension library there as part of it. And there's an application layout there, and it's exactly what we used for the demo application, just to show how easy it is to use. You drag and drop on one control onto a custom control called an application layout. You then drag and drop out another control to do your navigation down the left-hand side there, and that's it. You don't even have to tell the navigation piece which page you're on. It works it out itself. I put a really nasty, horrible IBM Connect logo at the top there, but you could put something nice up there and make that application look okay. You can control the colors because it's all done through one UI. And if you're running your XPages applications inside of your intranet, or even to your extranet, and you've got, the rest of your users are using IBM-provided tools like connections and stuff, this will look exactly the same as those, because one UI is the thing that's being used across all of IBM's products, so why wouldn't you want to make this look seamless and work with those? So my advice is to try and use the application layout that comes with the extension library, because it's easy and it saves you time. I mean, I'm a eco-friendly developer, I just describe myself as. I love to recycle other people's code. And, just go and use that because it's simple and easy. And now Matt's going to tell you something different.
So my life, I'm a developer, and I want to control everything about my application. As Tim said, one UI is really easy to add to your application, but it doesn't give you a huge amount in terms of the ability to customize it. Beyond colors, it's really difficult to customize. And there's a purist bit of me that if you go and look at the source HTML that one UI generates, it's horrible. It's all tables, and it's stuck in about 5 years ago in terms of some of the HTML that it uses.
I never said it was perfect, Matt. I just said it was easy.
The last couple of projects that I've worked on, I've used Bootstrap. And this is an open source JavaScript and CSS framework, which is released by...
Oh, I think we've lost Matt again.
No, the proponents of One UI just muted him.
Okay. So
I believe we have, but you may want to, I don't know how you're going to pick this one up, Tim, seeing as you're on the other side. Why don't you put your flavor on it?
Well, I'll put my flavor, yeah, absolutely. So Bootstrap is released by Twitter. So if you've ever been and looked at the Twitter website, which I'm sure pretty much everybody on this call has, you'll be familiar already with the look and feel of it. It's absolutely very easy to use, and it integrates very, very nicely with jQuery. As Matt's been telling you already, jQuery just seems to be simple for him. And I have to say, I have used Bootstrap as well, and it is easy, and it does have a whole bunch of built-in stuff that's very, very simple to implement inside a Domino application. I'm not against Bootstrap at all. It's great, and but for simple applications, I would rather use the One UI. However, if you want absolute control over your application, absolutely use a CSS framework, and the framework de jure is Bootstrap. It's open sourced, it's available for you to use anywhere you like, and it gives you absolute control.
I'm back again.
This
Tim,
is one
if you need
example.
me.
Okay, you can carry on talking now. I've been defending your
Sorry.
cause. Okay.
So yeah, this is a plain vanilla Bootstrap site that we're almost ready to release at the moment. It's the new UK Lotus user group website template, and I'm no UI designer, so this is completely vanilla, just taken the default look and feel of the application. And the whole point of this is that actually it looks quite nice, but it just works straight away as an XPages application. It was very simple to do, and if you go to the next slide, Tim. This is a second application, or an application that we were working on last year, and we're doing a second version of at the moment for one of our customers. And what we did here was, again, we developed a plain vanilla Bootstrap application and handed it over to a team of website designers. We gave them access to a single file inside our NSF using WebDAV, and they were able to completely change the look and feel of the application just by changing one CSS file. So this is really, in my view, the real beauty of Bootstrap, that you're able to completely change the look and feel of the application without touching any functional code at all. The nice thing about this is that in 6 months' time, when your corporate branding people come back to you and say, we're going to change the look and feel of everything in the company, you can do that with very, very minimal changes to your application, and you don't really need to worry about functional changes at all. You're purely looking at the colors and the positions of logos and things. So it's really a really impressive framework, and very extensible, and really very well documented indeed.
And we've got to the point that's important to make. We've actually got to the point now where you can not only separate the business logic from the data, we can absolutely separate the UI from those two things as well, so that we've got that great separation that everybody talks about is good development practice. So we can actually do good development practice now, and don't let anybody ever tell you different, because you can do it now. Right, some server-side tips. Okay, using themes. Matt, I think you should take this one.
So themes are a bit of an abstract concept, and often I'll find that maybe half the people I talk to don't actually use them in their XPages applications, because you don't have to use them. But there are some really simple reasons for using them, and you can do some more complicated things as well. So on the simple end of things, if you've got some CSS files, say you're using Bootstrap and you want to include those CSS files on every XPage in your application, then you can do that using a theme. All you need to do is literally just create a whole bunch of XML tags to say, I want to include these CSS files. You can do conditional loading to say, only load this file if I'm running IE, but you can load other files if you're not running IE, and things like that. So you've got really good control over what CSS gets sent down to the browser. But the things that I find most useful are where you want to go a bit more advanced. So as an example here, this chunk of XML allows us to override the default classes that get generated whenever a label is added to an XPage or a custom control. So instead of getting some sort of XSP CSS class assigned to the control, instead it's going to always have a class assigned called control-label. And again, this is a thing that you can change in one place. If your designers decide that they need another class assigned to all labels, then you can come in here and do it in one place and not have to go around every single label in the system. If Tim moves on to the next slide, you can do far more complicated things as well. So in this example, the top two chunks of XML, they're both defining different types of text field and how they will look. So the left-hand one is isite.date, and in here we're setting the style class to be input-small, and on the right-hand side we've got isite.largeInputText, and the class assigned is input-xxlarge. And what that means is that if I go into my custom control or my XPage, rather than setting the style class of an individual text field, I can just set the theme ID associated with the text field, and it will pick up the styling associated with that theme definition. So it means, again, that I can change a subset of all my fields in one central place and not have to worry about going and finding every instance of that field and changing the class or changing some other property, because you're not limited to just CSS in here. You can change pretty much any property on a field. So you can create some nice central control over your application. There are things that you can do in themes as well that you can't do anywhere else. It's just simply not possible. So that
I think that's over to you, Tim.
I'm loving this. It's like a game of slide roulette, isn't it? So that bottom example allows you to actually add stuff to inject stuff into the body tag of your HTML that you generate, which is not available to do anywhere else inside your XPages. So as you can see here, we're injecting some JavaScript into the body tag so that we get control over where it goes. And if you've ever struggled with trying to get something on every HTML page into the body tag, that's how you do it. Okay, there's a massive tip for you. You do it in the theme, and you do view root, and that allows you to get stuff into the body tag. So that's nice and easy.
Tim, sorry, I'm back again.
That's okay. I just want you to use a different browser, Harvey.
I've tried 3 at this point.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so I've just explained about the view root.
Yeah.
So we're on to attributes now.
So attributes are something that was added to Domino Designer in 8.5.3. And what they allow you to do against most controls is they allow you to define your own attributes. So, for example, you could add extra properties to an anchor tag or to a panel or all sorts of other things. The reason that they're very important is that as you start to use other frameworks, maybe jQuery, maybe Bootstrap, but there are many others as well, they'll often require you to add your own attributes to individual fields because that's how they operate. Dojo does the same, but that's built more closely into Domino Designer. So if we flip over to the next page, what you're able to do is start thinking a little sideways about the whole thing. So the chunk of XML there, I'm using a panel control inside my XPage to actually create an anchor tag that's going to get rendered onto the browser. And we're using attributes to define the href and the on-click of the page that gets of the tag that gets generated. So in this case, we've got a panel added. We set the tag name property to A, and then we add an attribute called onClick, and the value is do something. And the HTML that gets generated, from the browser's point of view, it doesn't know it's a panel. It's just an anchor tag, and there's an onClick in it. And it means that you're sort of cutting Dojo out of the loop there. Normally, if you have an onClick event on a link control, it will generate a whole load of Dojo interaction type stuff, and you don't get to control how that works. Using these attributes, you sort of get to work around the built-in functionality and do your own thing. The other thing that if you start using jQuery, you'll find is that lots of jQuery controls require attributes that start something like data dash toggle in this example, but there are sort of hundreds of them depending on the control that you're using. So again, you'll use attributes over and over to turn normal HTML controls into these funky jQuery controls that will do clever things that when you're using other jQuery plugins. Document locking is so every time we do this session, we always talk about scoped variables, and we never really talk about them in any practical sense. We always just say, just use them. So what we thought we'd do this time, rather than just talk about scoped variables, is walk through an example of something that I had to do very quickly last year. And that's to add a very simple, not very foolproof document locking mechanism to an application. So the idea is that whenever a user opens a page that has an edit document URL parameter, we're going to lock that document so no one else can get to it until that user has saved the document and we can unlock it. And we're going to use the application scope to store a Java hash map of who has locked individual documents. So a hash map is a Java object that stores a key value pair, basically. And we're going to store in the key the name, the universal ID of the document, and in the value, we're going to store a custom object that stores the name of the user, the time the document was locked, and something else, the date, I think. And then we're going to be able to use that information to display messages to other people trying to lock the document, and also so that we can use it internally to lock and unlock documents. So we've got some code on the next slide where it doesn't really matter what we're doing here, other than to say, if you look through this code and if you look at the example application, you'll see that we're storing a java.util.hash table into an application scope object called, or an application scope variable called document locks. And so we're able to just loop through that hash table and find out whether the current document, when the page is being loaded, is locked or not. And if it is, then we're going to say, no, you're not allowed to go and edit or save this document. If it isn't, then we're going to allow the user to lock the document and basically control the application that way. We carry on scrolling to the next page. That one.
Okay.
When the document is saved, we can then call this unlock document and pass in the universal ID of the document, and we can just remove the lock from the system so that other people can then come in and edit the document or whatever else it is they want to do. And the custom object that we've got there, the document lock object, is just defined right at the bottom of this slide, where we've just literally stored the universal ID, the name of the person, and the time that the document is being locked. So it's very, very simple and not foolproof. I'm sure you've already thought of a couple of the limitations. What happens if the user closes the browser, or how does an administrator come in and unlock things? And they're little conundrums that you have to solve for yourself. But they're not very difficult to do. So this is a screenshot of an example of a document where in a different browser I've logged in and put this particular document into edit mode, and when I've come to it as another user, I've got this warning saying that the document's been locked by me and the date time that it was locked, and also you'll see that there's no edit button.
Absolutely. Really good example of just doing something different with application scope variables, something that we've, as Matt said, we've always talked about in our presentations, but never actually shown you what you can do with them. So something else that we really know that everybody uses but probably doesn't realize it is that you're using expression language all over the place. When you do document1.name, for instance, to bind to a field, that's expression language. And expression language is extremely powerful and just really good shorthand of getting simple stuff done. So in this example here, what you can do is you can actually mix from this particular example, you can mix expression language along with JavaScript to go and get from this document1.name, you can go and get the value of country. And it's a lot easier than doing the dojo commands to go and get that. So it's a lot simpler and a lot quicker to actually just mix these two things up. So it's just a simple tip to get you speeded up on getting things out of documents when you need to. It's also, is this the first part of our, Matt, are you there? Have we lost Matt again? See, when I'm talking, I don't know that we've lost him. So this is the bit where I ask Matt a question, and Matt's supposed to answer and expand. Are you there, Matt?
Did you want me to play the part of Matt?
Have you seen this enough that you could?
I know a bit about expression language.
So, what we would...
I am back now.
Oh, is this
thank
the first
God.
of the three? Is this the first of the three, Matt, that I keep forgetting where we start this?
Yes, this is, well, it's the sort of 1A of 4 really at this point.
Okay, fine. So I was just explaining that it's a simple way of using shorthand to get to things instead of using the dojo, long-winded way of getting to things. So was it document1.get value and all the rest of it, and oh man, it goes on and on and on. So The next bit is Matt's, and I know that I wanted Matt to be here for managed beans.
So managed beans are something that look initially very scary because they've got a special name and there's Java involved and XML and all sorts of things, and they're really not very scary at all. You only need two things to set up a managed bean, and what they do basically is they allow, the idea of a managed bean is that you can put business logic into a central place and you can reference it anywhere in your application and not have to worry about managing that data. The server or the application manages that all for you. So you only need to do two things. First is you write a Java class that does something. In our case, we're going to look at sending an HTML email. It might manage the configuration data for your application, might do all sorts of things, but it's something nice and discrete and simple. It can be broken down into simple tasks. The other element that you need to do is you set up some XML configuration, and that tells the application
how to kill the audio. Tells the application how to actually get to your managed class, the class that you've stuck in the application. And after that, you don't need to do anything. So on this example, what we've got is this is a Java class that was written by Tony McGuckin, one of the guys who developed the XPages code back at IBM. And what he's done is he's submitted this managed bean to the X snippets, which is part of the OpenNTF stuff. And this thing does, it's, I think, 200 lines of Java code that you wouldn't want to write yourself because somebody else has written it, and we're good eco-friendly developers and we recycle other people's code, right? So it does a simple thing. It just sends an email, and it allows us to, control where that email goes. So what we do is we set up the XML configuration in the package explorer. We go to the faces config.xml, and we need to just say what the name of the bean is, and then what it's called, and then what are we actually doing to it. So the control the scope we're giving it is a request scope, so it's using a request scope variable, and because this is just an email and we're going to create this thing once, while we're requesting it, we care about what's in it, and we don't care about it after that because the email's been sent at that point. So we're setting up this request scope variable with this particular snippet's HTML email in it, and we're just saying we're going to call it the email bean, okay? And then in our next bit of code, you can see that we're actually going to send feedback using this particular bean, email bean, sends to, and we get to set who we're sending it to, what the subject is, what the email is, what the name is, and then add some body, some HTML body, and then we get to call the function in that particular managed bean send, and off it goes. And then the server takes care of the rest of that. So long as that bean has been inputted properly, and you've set the XML to tell it, actually, once I've got this data, where do I send it to actually have it sent? That's all fine, and off you go. And that managed bean is then looked after by the server, and we don't have to do much else other than give it the Java and tell it where to send the data it gets. And that's it. Simple. Managed beans, easy. There you go. So this is the first of our three parts for one tip, as it were. Okay, and the first thing is faces messages. Everyone's probably seen the validators where you put a field on next to a thing that says, oh, no, you haven't filled this in. This field can't be blank. Please give me some information, or the email address isn't formatted correctly. That's all well and good, okay, and you can do the validator as part of that field validation and fill in the error messages field. But what if you want to put something specific in there from somewhere else on the page? That's a lot harder to do, but there is a way of doing it, and for that we use faces messages. What it allows you to do is it actually allows you to insert into the error messages control on your page anything you like, and that can then start to be programmatic. So for instance, in here we're going to stick in the time is, whatever the time is now, and put that into the faces message, and that will then pump out when we get an error, or when that bit of code runs, or when the button's pushed or whatever. That will then put the time into the error messages. That's really useful if we want to start to expand this out into doing some better validation above and beyond what we're doing with the ordinary validators against against our fields and stuff, and our labels and stuff like that. So we can actually stick this functionality into Java classes that we're using and sticking into managed beans, which allows us to move from that back-end Java into the front end of the client and sticking messages in there with ease. So in this particular example, in this Java class, what we're doing is we're doing something quite silly actually. We're actually checking for the email field, and we're saying, does the email field have Fred in it? If it doesn't have Fred in it, it's not valid, which is kind of silly because no email would ever have Fred in it. But you can see the example. You mustn't enter just Fred, and we're going to put that into the faces message, and that will then appear in the error messages control on your XPage or your custom control. If we don't use the faces messages, we have no way of validating that inside our Java class to actually be able to put that stuff in there. So,
take over.
All we need to, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, sure. So that Java class that Tim was just talking about had one special setting on it, and that was the implements validator setting. What that means is that it's doing a sort of a special built-in function that you have to implement. So you always have to provide this validate method and take the faces context, the current page that you're working with, and the value that's being tested. And then what that allows you to do is set up what's called a custom validator. And you do that in the same way as with a managed bean. And basically you create a chunk of XML, which is on the next slide, which basically allows you to say, I'm going to create a validator. It's going to be called email validator. And this is the Java class that we're going to use to define this code. It allows you to start thinking about centralizing all of your business validation logic into a single.
Tim, I believe it's that time.
This is getting ridiculous. Oh, I can't remember where he was at. So into a single line of code. Yeah, so we've set our validator into a single line of code, and as you can see here, we're just going to call the validator class samples.email validator and have it actually validate for us using the validator in the Java class. I think that's where we were at. Am I right, Howard?
Actually, it's Paul, but Tim, I got to say, I'm very impressed the way you are thinking on your feet and handling this.
Wow, this is one of the toughest presentations I've ever given. I'll give you that.
Yeah, when Matt comes back, we'll remind him to speak quicker.
Yeah, because nobody will understand him at all. So let's move on to the next slide. So,
I'm not sure how long I'll get to speak.
Matt, talk quicker.
I've never seen such unstable software. I'm very sorry. So you create this email validator XML configuration, and then you go back to your custom control. And then rather than having to type anything else, you can just add a validator, and in the validator ID, enter email validator as the name of it. And then when you go and run your code, it will go off and execute that Java class for you. And you've not had to do anything inside your custom control. It allows you to move all of your business logic into one central place, so that 6 months down the line, you know, all my validation is here. We can come and you don't have to go and dig around inside custom controls and XPages to find it. And then it also allows you to do the thing that Tim's about to talk about on the next slide.
So this bit I was prepared for. So once we've done that, I mean, that validation that we were doing was just silly. It was, you haven't entered Fred in a field. Of course you haven't entered Fred because Fred isn't an email address. However, if you've ever tried to validate an email address with a regular expression or any other code that you've written, you'll know that it's really, really difficult to do. So it takes ages to write that bit of code. However, being good eco-friendly developers, we can recycle the stuff from commons.apache, and that you can download the commons validator.jar file and import it into your application and add it to your build path. Happy days, all you need to do. Once you've done that, you can call that whole bunch of validation from this line here, org apache.commons.validator.routines.email.validator.getInstance, and basically pass it in your email, and it will give you a true or false, because the Apache Commons code, there's rafts and rafts and rafts of it, loads and loads and loads of good stuff. If you want to check strings are proper, numbers are proper, integers are at the right length, all that kind of stuff, you can do all of that stuff with the Apache Commons. If you want to validate something, you can bet your bottom last dollar that somebody's already written that and put that into Apache's Commons. If they haven't, then you are trying to do something spectacularly unique. So well done, and you know, you get our praise for that. However, take a look at Apache Commons. There is a whole bunch of stuff that it will allow you to do, and you can use that validation against your applications and get this stuff validated very, very quickly. So there is a whole raft of email stuff in there and all sorts of other stuff that's available for you to use. So that allows us to move on to debugging tips. And the first debugging tip we're going to give you is the log file viewer. Now, the log file viewer isn't just usable for XPages, it's usable for anything. If we take a look at it in a second on the next slide, you'll see that we can use it for all sorts of things. I am involved in a project at the moment where I asked the system administrator to install this thing for me because I wanted to see what was going on with the application, and he went, "Wow, this is really useful for me as well. It means I can, you know, move outside of the Domino administrator and actually see some different stuff that actually I don't have access to in Domino administrator. This is really quite cool." And it makes watching log files really, really simple, especially if you're over long distance, long distance connections. It makes that really simple. So as you can see here, we can get to the console, we can see the XPages log, error logs, trace logs, startups, logs.nsf, and we can go and set this thing up. All we need to do is go and put the log file reader.nsf on the server, give it some permissions, because clearly you would need to do that, and sign it with you do all have Domino Designer or application designer IDs, don't you, that have access to do things on your servers. I can hear you all nodding. It's fine. Okay, good. So you sign it with that, and off you go. You can do stuff on your server because that ID will have the right access rights to do stuff on your server. Your administrator can use it too, and he might find it very, very useful to be able to go to his servers that he doesn't have good connection to with a browser, or do it from home with it when he doesn't have a Domino administrator client handy, so that he can go and see what's going on the server. Really, really useful tool. Matt, are you there?
I am still here.
Wow.
So this is another OpenNTF project written by a guy called Mark Lusink, who's based in the Netherlands, and it's basically to prevent you having to write print statements in your server-side JavaScript, amongst other things. It's called the debug toolbar, and it's added as a set of custom controls to your application. And it appears at the top of your web page, and you're allowed to write messages to it. So you can actually put debug statements in your server-side JavaScript, and you'll see them getting written out to the debug toolbar as the page is being executed. And as that screenshot shows, you can go and investigate other things as well. So you can go and look at the contents of the application scope, session scope, view scope. You can go and look at the environment settings of the Java, and you can also go and inspect the HTML that's being generated by your XPage using this toolbar. It's just an extra add-on that's really very useful indeed. And actually, Mark has done a second version of this for mobile development specifically, and that's available as part of another OpenNTF project that I help out on called the Unplugged Custom Controls Library, which again is on OpenNTF, along with 100 other good projects. So there's some really good stuff there.
Keep going, Matt, while it's good.
Java debugging is something that we were asking for for a long time as soon as XPages came around, and it was made available to us in 8.5.3. It's very easy to set up with a couple of caveats. So the first thing you have to do is, on a development server, you don't want to ever do this in production. You add these two lines to the notes ini on the dev server. Restart the server, and then you basically go into your Domino Designer configuration. You move over to the next slide, Tim.
Yep.
So you go and create a debug configuration for Java. And in that, you have to tell it which NSF you're going to be debugging, the server that you're going to be connecting to, and the port number that you're operating on. So 8000 is the default port, which is, again, you define that in the notes on the previous slide, but as long as they match, that's fine. And then what happens is, as soon as you click the debug button, you go to your browser, load up the page, and once you've set a breakpoint in your code, your Domino designer will take over the screen, and you'll actually be able to step through the generation of the HTML of your page that's executing on the server. So in this screenshot here, you've got the actual code that you're stepping through in the center left window. In the top right, you've got all of the variables that are in memory at the moment. And in the other panes, you can go and examine other things, so you can see what threads are executing, the outline of the classes that you're looking at, and you can also see the console as well for any statements that are getting written out there. So it's a really useful way of...
It's a really useful way of putting me on the spot. So it's a useful way of actually being able to stop your code and see what's going on. Now, that's all very well for Java debugging. That works really well. Once you've set your breakpoints, your Domino designer takes over and allows you to step through your code and see what's going on. And you can actually do this for server-side JavaScript as well. All you need to do is add these lines to the notes.ini, and you'll need to do this on the server, I believe. There was a whole session on this at Connect, so there's an hour's worth of content in this, these two slides. So basically, go and turn on the Java Enable Debug in your notes.ini, and then restart your HTTP task, and it should allow you to then start server-side JavaScript debugging. Configuration's a little different, not much, but your configuration screen will look like this. You have to give it a name, specify the host and the port, and then click on debug, and then off you go. Once you've set your breakpoints, if you hit a breakpoint in your code, the same kind of debugging screen comes up for you in a debug perspective, and you can see again what's exactly going on. So you can see what the variables are, where you are in the outline, what's actually going on in the X page, which bit of code you've got to, and step through, step over, continue running, all that kind of good stuff that you would expect from any old debugger you like. It's
the only
awesome.
other caveat I'd add to this debugging stuff, is that you're only allowed one person to do debugging against a server at a time. So if you're able to have multiple development servers or your own development server, it makes your life a lot easier. I believe there's some talk about changing around licensing to allow developers to run a local server on their machine specifically to allow them to do this sort of thing.
So, yeah, I mean, hopefully that will mean that we won't all need server licenses to be able to run a development server on our machines, a proper development server, not just the HTTP code that runs inside your designer client. Okay, and I think we've actually probably made it through to our last tip, Matt. Well done. So I hit this one the other week. I was developing something, and I came across that I cut and paste a lot of the source code from one custom control to another, and I'd done that for a custom control that was part of the extension library. And what I hadn't done is I hadn't realized what I was doing, or what was happening underneath my mouse when I was dragging and dropping on custom controls. So when you drag and drop on a custom control onto an X page in the GUI version of it, what happens is it changes the XML underneath, and you'll be able to see at the second XP view XML there. The first one is just what you get from a standard X page. Okay, so the view tag at the top there, XML namespace is XPages, and then there's the reference to it, which you're supposed to be able to go to and get some documentation, right? I haven't tried that yet. I suspect it might not work, but we'll get into that later. But when you stick something on from the extension library, you'll see that it adds another namespace at the top there, so XE, so not just XPages, but extension library, XPages extension, and then a different namespace for you to go look at. So if you cut and paste stuff from source code to source code on different custom controls, and you've done a control from the extension library, make sure that you either add this namespace manually at the top of your XML, or drag and drop on the custom control that you want, okay, onto your page in GUI mode, and then switch into source code and replace that XML that you've just created with the XML you've copied from the other source code. If you don't do it, you end up with the big red error that you see at the top there. The prefix XE for element XE navigator is not bound because there's no namespace for it on the page. So that's just something that tripped me up, and it took me about 35 to 40 minutes to work out what was going on and what I'd done or what I hadn't done and why I'd got this error. Anything you wanted to add to that, Matt, if you're still there?
I am still here, but you've got it all right.
Hooray! Okay, so that's our contact details. Please contact us if you've got any questions. I know Matt and I are very busy people, but we're always happy to hear from people and try and answer as many questions as we can. And I guess that's then back to Howard and Paul to answer or tell us what questions there are that we can try and answer now.
Yeah, Tim, if you could just pass that presentation ball over to Howard.
Sure, I shall do that right now.
And while Tim's doing that, my apologies again for dropping out so many times.
Yeah, Matt, one of the questions from one of the attendees is they want to know if you wrote that code.
My code is far more fault tolerant than this.
There you go, Paul, you are the presenter.
Paul, you should send that over to me.
Yeah, you want to pass out over to Howard, Tim.
I can't do that now.
Yeah, you have to do it, Paul.
Sorry.
Okay, I can do that. Howard, you should have control.
Okay. Now, where's the... I should have control. Where's the... I have to find the interface now. Kind of got lost. Where did it go? That's a good question.
Maybe if you try to
I have to bring up the
screen.
Yeah, I have to bring up the panel. There have been all sorts of problems today.
Okay, well,
oh, we can go ahead and start while I bring up the last slide. Which first of all, just a reminder to everyone that at the top of your screen you should have a WebEx interface, and one of the buttons is Q&A. If you don't see it there, but you see a drop-down arrow on the right side, then just use that, and then the Q&A pane will be there.
Okay, I'm going to start with a question from Rick. Oh, I see you found that, Howard, and you've just taken away my interface. Let's try again. One moment. There are some interesting switches in the interface as we move from one presenter to another, so apologies, everyone. So Matt, Tim, or Tim being Matt, we have a question from Rick. Just installed Upgrade Pack 1 on my 853 Domino server and Designer client. Will Notes 9 require that I uninstall that before I upgrade to Release 9?
No, you shouldn't need to.
The official line I was given, because I presented a session at Connect about administering XPages applications. The official line is that, in theory, you shouldn't need to uninstall Upgrade Pack 1, but the techie guys I spoke to said it wouldn't hurt to uninstall before upgrading, and all of my administrator friends, with the caveat that I'm very much a developer and I don't do admin stuff, all my admin friends say you really should uninstall Upgrade Pack 1 before upgrading to 9.
Yes, and if I could add to that, I mean, there's variations of the extension library. So you could be running Upgrade Pack 1, you could be running the extension library. or the Release 9 beta. And I would also encourage a uninstall and then reinstall.
And actually, if you're running an extension library, you should be and you're running it inside an update site, you should be disabling that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Howard.
So here's kind of a non-technical question for everyone. I think I don't think I've seen anything, but Harry wants to know, is there an official XPages logo? He wants to put it on his slides when he presents to management. Have you guys seen anything? I don't remember seeing anything that's official.
There isn't one.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So Harry, I guess you can just make one up. It'll give you something to do in Photoshop. Rick had a question. Are there any jQuery version dependencies like there are for Dojo? So I guess if you guys have any comments on that.
Yeah, there definitely are. So I think the current release of jQuery is 1.8. Sorry, that's Dojo. I've forgot my version numbers now. But yes, there are dependencies, and it's just something to be aware of. The jQuery.com site is much better at giving you the latest version and sort of degrading gracefully. So it's less of a worry than with Dojo, but yeah, there definitely are version numbers that you need to be aware of. It's more important with plugins, actually. Often plugins are written against a specific version, like 1.7.3 or something, and they may not work on either earlier or later versions, so you have to be quite careful.
Okay, a question from Rick M, and I just tacked on the M, it's the same Rick. Is the Eclipse UI in the Domino IDE going to be upgraded to track more to the native Juno Eclipse?
I've not heard anything. I keep on bashing IBMers every time I meet them, trying to get them to do it. I've not heard any official word that it's going to happen, but I know that they're aware of it. If you've got some route in through your sales representative, it probably wouldn't hurt to go and bend their ear as well, because the more people that say it, the more likely it is to happen.
The other thing that I'd say is go and raise that on the XPages forums on DeveloperWorks, because the XPages developers that write the core stuff in the server, not just us guys out in the world of writing XPages applications, but those guys inside IBM do take a close look and keep looking at the stuff that's going on in the DeveloperWorks forums.
Okay, thanks. We had a couple folks who wanted to either get a URL or a setting that was on one of the slides. The slides will be made available in an email that we will send in the next few days, along with a link to the recording of this webinar on most likely YouTube. So if you're looking for a particular setting or URL, we did post a couple URLs in the chat. You can get those now, or you can wait and get the slides in a few days. So we will send out an email to all the attendees.
And Howard, if it's all right with you, what we'll do is we'll give you the zip file that's got not only the PDF of the presentation, but the demo application that goes with it.
Okay. I don't know if we have a place to host that, so we'll talk about that. You do? Okay. That would be great.
Both Matt and I have places to host that, so that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, if you send a link to that, we can put that in the email.
Sure.
Okay. I have a question from Barbara. Is server-side JavaScript debugging, is that allowed on a production server or just a development server? And I'll just modify that, allowed and recommended.
So allowed?
Allowed, technically, yes. Recommended, definitely not. The reason it's not recommended is basically when you turn on Java debugging or server-side JavaScript debugging, what you're doing is opening up a security hole. So in theory, someone could attach to that port and they can actually see data that they shouldn't be able to see. All they would need to do is set up a debug session and they could attach on to anything that's executing on the server. So that's the reason you don't run that in production.
Okay, thanks. Here's a question from Rohit about the validators in XPages, the custom validator. He wants to know if they can also implement a custom converter.
Yes, you can. I'm just trying to think the best place. Declan Lynch did a series of articles on his blog about doing custom converters. So qtzar.com is the place to go for that. qtzar.com.
Okay, thanks. And I think there was also a something on one of the wikis. I know someone's wrote a set of good articles on custom validators and, well, just validators in general, not just custom. And I believe they also covered converters as well. So probably a Google search would find that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question from Slawomir. On managed beans, do we have to worry about freeing memory, destroying instances after using?
That's pretty much the whole point of managed beans, that the server will do that for you. I think I probably, in between getting chopped off once or twice, I probably forgot to mention that the Java class that you write for your managed bean, you implement an interface called serializable, and it's that which allows the server to write the contents of the object into memory or onto disk, and then read it out of memory or out off the disk, and sort of keep it around. But you specifically don't have to worry about creating it or destroying it. The server will do that for you. In fact, our experience is we tried something that we thought was clever with a managed bean, where we were clearing out the values stored by it. And if you try and reset or reinitialize the bean, it just falls apart and you have to restart the server.
Okay, and a question for Matt from Andrew. How would you get a handle on the ID in Dojo of a Dojo-generated object? For example, the tab list in a tab panel.
You've got several options. It depends how it's being generated. If you're writing client-side JavaScript inside an event or a button or something inside your custom control or your XPage, you can use the # curly bracket ID colon syntax, and that will translate the ID of the element that you're referring to. If you're using server-side JavaScript inside your custom control or XPage, there's a method called getClientID, and you just pass in the name of the element that you're trying to get, and that will return the ID that's going to be generated out on the browser. If you can't do either of those, then my solution is usually to add a CSS class to the element that you want to go and find, something unique. You don't define any CSS for it, but then you use that as a selector. Dojo has a method built in called dojo.query, where you can go off and it's the equivalent of jQuery dollar function, where it allows you to go and select elements that have that class name assigned to them, and they get returned as an array on the client side. And then you can just go and get the first element of the array, and it should return the element that you need. It was maybe not the most efficient, but it works actually surprisingly well. So for things like tab tables and tab lists, that can actually work really well, where you've got a selection of them and you just assign one class to all of those tabs, and you can just loop through them and find the one that you're wanting to deal with.
Okay, thanks. Paul, do you have one last question? I think we're out of time.
Yes, I've got a question from Rick. Can an XPage application built on a server with the upgrade pack or the extension library be replicated to a DMZ server for public web-facing that does not have the upgrade pack or extension library installed?
Simple answer is no. The servers have to be the same. That code that runs in the upgrade pack or the extension library doesn't exist inside the NSF, so it has to be available on the server that's executing the code for it to work.
Let me add to that, Matt, too, is that in that case, one thing, well, first of all, either go to Domino 9, because then all that is built in on both your servers, and another option would be if you use the extension library, you can use the update site technology, which puts all the code for the extension library that's needed by the server in a notes database, Domino database, that can then be replicated to other servers, and you would just need to change one notes INI setting on both servers, or all your servers, to have that have them use the extension library generated from the update site, which makes it very easy for administrators. Again, going to Domino 9, the problem goes, the issue goes away. It's all built in. Okay, so I think that we're going to call it a wrap. I know we went a few minutes over. If anyone has any questions about TLCC or Teamstudio, their contact information is up on the screen. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and especially thank Matt and Tim for doing a great webinar today. If we had a little applause button, I would ask everyone to hit the applause button. But I'd like to thank Matt and Tim on everyone's behalf for spending your time with us today. As always, you did a great job.
It's been a pleasure.
Apologies for dropping out all the time.
We're going to have to talk to WebEx about that. Okay, everyone, have a good day. And Colleen, do you have anything to add, or do you want to?
Nothing to add, just to echo your sentiments. I think it was a great session. We'll see you all hopefully again next month. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Colleen.